You've heard the saying a million times, right? A man's home is his castle. It sounds so simple, so powerful, it conjures up images of safety, of a personal fortress. But what does that actually mean when it comes to the law? Let's get into it.
Yeah, that's really the big question we're digging into. When someone you don't want in your house crosses that line, what are your rights, legally speaking? The answer, or at least a big part of it, is found in a legal idea called the Castle Doctrine.
Okay, so first things first, let's break down what this doctrine is all about. What does it actually say? So here's the deal. The Castle Doctrine is a legal framework that says you can use deadly force against an intruder in your home. But the really critical part, the thing that makes it so different, is that it removes the duty to retreat. You see, in many other self-defense situations, the law might say you have to try and escape the danger first. The Castle Doctrine says, nope, not in your own home. Here, you can stand your ground.
But hold on, it's not some kind of blank check to do whatever you want. The doctrine only kicks in if some very specific conditions are met. So what are these rules of engagement?
It really boils down to four main ideas. First, it legally establishes your home as that protected castle. Second, as we said, it gets rid of the duty to retreat. But here's where it gets really important. You have to have a reasonable belief that you're in imminent danger of serious harm or death. And finally, any force you use has to be proportional to the threat. Your reaction has to make sense given the intense circumstances of that moment. This phrase right here, reasonable belief, is the absolute heart of the matter. It's the whole ballgame. The question isn't just about what you believed was happening. It's about what a neutral, so-called reasonable person would have believed in that exact same high-stakes situation. This is the single element that gets looked at the hardest in court. Now, this brings us to something that trips a lot of people up. You've probably also heard of stand your ground laws. Are they the same thing as the Castle Doctrine? The short answer is no, they're not. The key difference really comes down to one word: location. The Castle Doctrine is specifically for your castle, your home, your car, your occupied space. Stand your ground laws take that same core idea, no duty to retreat, and they stretch it to apply to public spaces too. So one is for your fortress, and the other is for the world outside it. Hey, just a quick pause here. If you're finding this explainer useful, we'd really appreciate it if you could hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this with anyone you think might be interested. It makes a huge difference. Thanks. All right, let's zoom out a bit for some perspective and look across the border. How does the American approach stack up against Canada's? As you're about to see, their legal philosophies are worlds apart. And here's the headline: Canada does not have a Castle Doctrine, period. There's no equivalent law in their books. Their approach to self-defense is built on a totally different legal foundation, and it creates some really interesting contrasts with the U.S. system. Check this out. While U.S. laws are set at the state level, Canada's is federal. But the most massive difference, the real game changer, is that last row, the burden of proof. In many U.S. states with a Castle Doctrine, the government has to prove you weren't acting in self-defense. In Canada, the script is completely flipped. You have to prove that your actions were a reasonable response. That totally changes the legal mountain you have to climb after an incident. So instead of a Castle Doctrine, Canadian law revolves around this idea of reasonable force. The focus here is all on proportionality. Every single case comes down to one question: was the amount of force you used a necessary and reasonable response to the threat you were facing? It's a very different way of looking at the same problem.
Whew, we have covered a ton of ground, from legal definitions to international law. So let's boil this all down to the key things you absolutely need to remember.
All right, let's recap. First, remember the Castle Doctrine is for your home, not for public spaces. Its main job is to remove that duty to retreat. But, and this is the most important part, the whole defense rests on having a reasonable belief that you're in danger. And finally, our Canadian neighbors have a totally different system, built not around a castle, but around a standard of reasonable force. You know, all of this leaves us with a really big, fundamental question that both of these legal systems are trying to answer. How do we as a society balance that deep human need to feel safe in our own homes with the incredible legal and moral seriousness of using force against another person? It's a line that's drawn not just in law books, but in real, life-altering moments.